welcome you all for this Maitri Milan session. Today we have the chanting of Karma Yoga, and let us try to look into the fourth shloka of this compilation of Karma Yoga shlokas, and that is Karmendriyani Sanyamya Ya Asthe Manasasmaran Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Midhyacharaha Sa Uchyate. Those who practice the discipline controlling at the level of karmendriyas, at the level of organs of action, but at the same time manasasmaran, they don't have control at the mind level. They nurture the ideas of the indulgence of the sensory organs at the mind level. Krishna calls them as Midhyacharaha. These are the people who they are hypocrites. Savuchyate. It's a very meaningful shloka, and it is one shloka which is really applicable. We can bring it into our day-to-day life as a regular practice. As I was telling the other day, that Karma Yoga is not what activity that you do, but what is the attitude, what is the posture that is there behind, which makes the activity either karma or Karma Yoga. It is the posture that is there which determines whether it is karma or Karma Yoga. Activity is what you see outside, the attitude what belongs to you. Activity is what the world perceives, but the attitude is something which is true to yourself. You are interested in your growth, development, not in the world outside. Very often, this is not clearly understood. That's why people think that the work that you do outside makes it as Karma Yoga. Great work that you do, some spiritual work for an ashram, and that's what is Karma Yoga. Whereas I do the work at home, a simple work in the office, these are not Karma Yoga. Like that, people have a wrong notion. That is why Krishna makes it very clear, saying that it is not the activity per se makes it as Karma Yoga, but it is the attitude behind the activity that is what makes it Karma Yoga. He gives us at the whole of Bhagavad Gita several suggestions, and the way that Krishna deals with the Karma Yoga in Bhagavad Gita looks like that Bhagavad Gita is essentially a Karma Yoga text. That's why Bal Gangadhar Tilak gives the whole Bhagavad Gita as a text of Karma Yoga. And it looks very important also that way, because Arjuna's purpose is supposed to be running away from the battlefield, and Krishna has to put him back into the work. But it is not a simple, logical, rational solution that Krishna is trying to do, but it is much more important as the way at a spiritual journey that Krishna is making Arjuna to do. So in this path of change of an attitude behind an activity, several suggestions Krishna gives to Arjuna. One such suggestion that comes forth is this one. Karmendriyani Sanyamya Yasthe Manasasmaran Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Midhyachara Sa Uchyate. In this particular shloka, it gives us a very clear indication that though in the creation that we are not created the body separate, mind separate, intellect separate, sensory organ separate, it is not created like that. When God created, all these things are together, they are created. Like the way that when the plant comes out of the seed, the plant already has the fruits, the leaves and the branches and everything like that. The same way that when we are born, the first point when we take birth in the mother's womb itself, all these things are determined, all these things are set. It is not that they are separate. The animals are also like that, but look at the way that the animals are. In the animals, all these things behave in total harmony. That means to say, Whatever that the mind says, whatever the body says, whatever that the intellect says, all those things in the case of animals, they are together, they are not separate. Like for example, when they are hungry, they eat food. When they don't have hunger, then they don't go for food. They just abstain from eating, however wonderful the food may be. That means to say, between their mind and the body, the sensory organs and then their mind, there is no separation between them. Children are also like that. That shows that when we were born, even our sensory organs, the body and the mind, all those things were together. A child drinks milk when the child is hungry, otherwise throws away the milk. Does not bother about whether how much milk is left behind in the bottle. It is mother's worry. Mother forces the child, come on, drink, don't leave this. Where do I keep it? And in fact, some mothers are very intelligent. They tell the child, less than 1 year, few months child, said, drink this milk, finish it, otherwise until 1 o'clock I will not give food. Which child knows what is 1 o'clock? This is how we create. We separate them. Slowly as we grow, what happens is in our situation, that sensory organs and the mind, they are so diverse, they are so separated in such a way that it is very difficult to see that you put them together. This is what Krishna says. What you do with the sensory organs is not sufficient, but you have to put the mind behind together with that. But what happens with us is that we control at the sensory organ, but then we do not control the mind. Because what happens is sensory organs, our activity at the sensory organ is what the world sees. The world is worried about what you do, and that's what people see. And then we also try to look at the activity as what others observe. This is where basically the whole problem comes. Whereas in the mind, that you continuously nurture the idea. This is what Krishna says, that one who does an activity at the body level he controls, at the body level, at the sensory organ level, he has absolute wonderful mastery control. But at the mind level, if he does not have control, it is not a practice of spirituality. So today what happens is that the whole spiritual dimension is based on what is seen outside. People have all kinds of marks on the forehead, on this dress that they wear and the way that they work activity outside. These are the things which are the measure for spirituality, but then what is there inside, it does not make sense. Unfortunately, that's how we have taken the spirituality to in the wrong direction. How many temples that you visit, how many ways that you practice all those things, but then what is there inside, nobody is bothered about it. That's what the world says. We have separated ourselves. This is what is called, Krishna calls it as mithyachara. In fact, the people who try to look at the spirituality also, they try to control the senses outside. They try to do the discipline at the world outside, but then they have not paid attention towards inside. Yes, in order to create the world outside, we have institutions, we have discipline in the world outside which can control, like the way the policeman makes us to do the activity in a disciplined way. Police does in a social way, whereas the spiritual leaders do it as in a spiritual way, but then it is not really a spiritual growth. It's only a religious mark that is there outside that people follow. And several spiritual institutions have developed like that. That means to say, though the forces are there inside at the mind level, but then they have developed the control mechanism that is there outside. In fact, in Christianity, there is a group called Quakers, and then these Quakers, they try to punish the sensory organ outside. They try to control the sensory organ outside. And we also have stories like that. A story of Surdas, because his eyes were looking at something which is beautiful, girls and all that, he tried to punish his eyes, he plucked his eyes. But that plucking the eyes does not stop your mentation on the object that is there outside. In fact, one who controls at the sensory organ, he will indulge into the sensory objects much more deep inside. Because at least the sensory organs involve at a particular time, but when the mind can involve all the time. You control, if you do not control the food outside, at least you eat 3 times a day. But then if you discipline yourself by controlling the food outside, then 24 hours you are thinking of only food. This is what is the damage that is done. In fact, it is opposite to spirituality. It is appearing to be going towards spirituality, but it is going away from spirituality. That's why it is not that discipline that is there outside, it is important, but how much that you discipline from within. In fact, if I bring people to Prashanti and for weight loss program 15 days, out of which first 3-4 days you are in total discipline and diet, and the next few days are a regulated diet and all those things. When they go back to Bangalore, all that they see in Bangalore is nothing but Darshini. All Darshinis are the fast food center. This is what you see. How unfortunate it is, because that the control actually it works like a catapult. That means to say that you control little bit, but then the force that is developed inside is much more. And not only that, there is another damage that is done when you control outside, but when you have not controlled inside, because the control outside, people say that, wow, what a great person that you are. You have so much discipline, you have so much of control and all those things. And this control that is done outside becomes our arrogance, because essentially that you start developing your ego that how great I am because so many people tell me about that. That means all our personality is what other people value, not what you are valuable inside. This is not the spiritual growth. And the third important aspect that happens is that you control the forces at the sensory organ outside. But if you have not controlled the mind, which is supposed to be the dynamo, which creates the force within, if you have not controlled there, then the force definitely builds up inside. But then this force does not have an avenue that it can manifest through the sensory organ. Naturally, those forces will go in all other directions. Like the way the people who control the sensory organ, like sex, then they become gluttonous. That means to say that at some control at one center, that you manifest at the other center. People who control their food, then you can see that they become irritable. That means to say that their forces act in the other direction. So this way, that the forces that you control at the sensory organ, but without controlling the origin of these forces which are at the mind level, if you do not do that, it manifests at so many other areas. Lot of psychosomatic disorders are because that you are sensitive, you develop the forces inside, but then you don't have an avenue to manifest these forces, and then the controlling definitely manifests in the form of sicknesses. Many religious institutions develop this idea of controlling outside. Look at this recently, this Ayyappan program is there, where people definitely control their outside behavior. Like the way that they don't wear slippers, they wear only the black dress, and then they take that particular diksha. But all these things that are there, if it is not supplemented by definitely developing the reformation within, then what happens? This will be waiting for its eruption. It is like a volcano that you develop. Most of these spiritual institutions have developed the control outside like that, and then the forces are going on inside, and basically that does not reform the individual. This is what Sigmund Freud came to a conclusion, saying that these forces are definitely there, don't control them. You have to give avenue for these forces to manifest outside. Sigmund Freud should have read Bhagavad Gita, Ideas of Krishna, then he would have seen that Krishna very clearly talks about that. It is not the controlling at the sensory organ, but controlling deep inside at the mind level. That's what is important. If we do not control at the mind level, if we do not accept ourselves at the mind level, but then who has to do it? It is you have to convince yourself that the discipline is something which is not coming from outside. It is coming from within. It is something which is important for you. If you do not convince yourself, then what happens is that you yourself split into a dual personality. You divide yourself into two personalities. One personality says, let me enjoy the world outside, let me go out into the world outside, let me take all possible avenues to see that I manifest. But then there is another personality of yours, what other people think about me, what other people value for me, so I should control. So this is so basically you create a fighting within yourself. you create a dual personality within yourself. A samyama, a control which is supposed to increase your inner strength, the strength of the soul. Like for example, look at the hunger. How strong is the force of hunger? How strong is the force of sleep? And if you are disciplining that from deep within, what must be the power of you who is controlling that? It must be enormous amount of power. Any small little activity, like one full day, just say without talking, how strong the force of talking is. And then if you control that talking force, that means to say, the this willpower which is controlling the talking force, how strong that willpower must be. And it is not just one talking, one eating. In all different areas, if you are trying to control yourself, what must be the power of inner strength that we have? This disciplining force that is there within itself is the divinity. And that's what is our willpower. And this can be so strong, but then unfortunately, a force which can really develop, recognize, make you understand about, in touch with that deep inner the force of the willpower that is there, if we do not do it from the deep inside at the mind level, if we do not control, then unfortunately what happens? This very control splits you, makes you schizophrenic, dual personality. You are fighting with yourself. A person who is fighting with himself, how can he be strong? You become weak. The battle is a losing battle. Ultimately, who loses? It is you who are losing, because on either side you are there. It is you who are losing. So what is supposed to make you strong will? What is supposed to make you a stronger personality from within? Makes you a weaker personality. And then not only that, because that your mind is constantly contemplating on the things what you are controlling from outside, and then your mind is constantly watching at the world outside, then you find fault with the world outside. I have come across such people who are totally disciplined within themselves, that they have all kinds of spiritual practices in the world, for the world to show outside. But deep inside, because that they nurture these ideas, whenever they go into the world outside, they keep continuously finding fault with the other. Look at him, he is after food. Look at him, he eats after dress. Look at him, he talks to the girls with a smile. I mean, you find fault with everybody. Why does it happen? Because essentially, though from outside that you are not involved in all those things, your mind is constantly contemplating on that. Your whole meditation is going on in the wrong direction. That's what he says. Such a person is supposed to be Mithyachara. Now, there's a very beautiful way Krishna uses that. In fact, Vimudhaha, he uses that word. That means to say, such persons are stupid. What is stupidity? Ignorance is something that we all know. Ignorance is a starting point. But then he doesn't call him as ignorant. Ignorant is somebody who does not know that there is a higher level of transaction, higher way of transaction, and the sensory organs draws, and then we go behind the sensory organ, and this is what is basically an ignorance. So giving yourself continuously to the sensory organ is ignorance, like the way that the animals give. The animals are drawn by the sensory organ, they go behind it. Like the food is there, animal does not think whether I should eat the food or not, whether I should control my hunger or not. The animal simply goes and eats food. It does not look at. You come out of the temple with the prasadam, and then the monkey which is sitting on the top of the temple doesn't even think that this is prasadam and this is something which you have to take, and then whether I should take it or not, just grabs that prasadam from you. It does not have any discrimination. Why? Because it is ignorant. Ignorance is the level. Same way children. Children are ignorant. That when they are hungry, the food is there, that they just eat it. They don't understand whether they should sit down and then say Brahmarpanam. They don't have any of those ideas. Ignorance is the starting point. Nothing wrong with the ignorance. Ignorance is one level. And we are trying to develop over the ignorance, and that's what is the knowledge. But then what is Krishna? Uses this as Mithyachara. For the Mithyachara, it is Vimudha. Vimudhatma Mithyachara Sauchyate. Vimudha is stupid. What is the stupidity? It is one step below the ignorance. Now we wonder, how can there be anything which is below the level of ignorance? Ignorance itself is the starting point. Every child starts a journey from ignorance. How can you be Vimudha? Vimudha is because basically that you are following the wrong path, all right, but you think that you are progressing. There's a very beautiful story in the Indian philosophy about this particular stupidity. That's what is the story of Kalidasa. When they want to find out somebody who is really stupid to be married to that queen, and then they went round in the forest and they found that this one person who is sitting on the branch and cutting the same branch. Not that he did not see the others sitting and cutting the branches, but then in that same forest there are others who are sitting in the other branches cutting the different branches. But they found that this man is sitting on the same branch and cutting that branch. Then they went to him and asked him, don't you know that you should not be sitting on the branch that you cut? He says, no. Are you not stupid? He said, no, the others are stupid. Why? Because look at them. They have to put so much effort to cut the branch, whereas my branch is cutting faster. Because you put your weight on that, naturally it goes faster. Mithyachara is that. Such a person is not that he knows, he does not know it. He thinks that he knows it and follows. A person who looks at outside and then does all the disciplines from outside, and the deep inside he never looks into himself, such a person is Mithyachara. Such a person is stupid. Such a person is this person who says Vimudhatma. Why he calls it as Vimudhatma? Because you can look into yourself, nobody else can look into yourself. The world is supposed to be the mirror. What mirror shows you is the personality outside. Mirror does not show your soul. Mirror does not show your consciousness. Mirror only shows your body. And then what the world also sees outside is your body. And world is a mirror. And we value ourselves that we are somebody great or somebody extraordinary based on the world outside. And the world says that you are great and then you take yourself to be great. This is what basically Mithyachara. You have a possibility for you to go deep inside. In fact, you have no possibility of going deep into anybody else. You can only go deep into yourself. And such deep inner personality of yours, nobody else knows, only you know about it. And that, you miss it. That means you take the world outside. Now look at the whole thing. Mind is inside and the sensory organs are outside. One who follows the sensory organ and not the mind is a person, one who goes outside, not going inside. The whole spiritual journey is turning inwards. When the Upanishad says don't go behind the object outside, which means basically turn the sensory organs inwards. That means you perceive inside. Kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmanamaichitaha avritta chakshuhu. That means we need to turn inwards. And then the correction has to take place inside. This way, when you look at the mirror of the world outside, and then you build your personality of the world outside, whatever that outside personality built based on the world outside, mirror, and that's what is essentially ego. What is your deep inside is the consciousness. And the ego is something which is based on what the world, other people think about me. In fact, such people, they become spiritual for the sake of the world, to show to the world outside. In front of everybody, they sit for meditation. But what is going on inside, they only know. God alone should save them. This is what he says. What is a person who is a Mithyachara? What is a person who is a Vimudha? That means to say that ordinary simple methods will not help him. Only thing is that he meets with a Waterloo. He meets with a situation where he finds these things are creating problem. Then he turns inward. What Karma Yoga says is not what you do for the world outside, what you show to the world outside, but what you are. What you do is what the world is about, what the manifested world. What you are is what is the deep inside, the spirituality. This is what is the difference between the doing and the being. We are already doing. In fact, method of the whole society, the whole rules in the society, everything is there to see that how your doing is improved, how you are doing has been taken care of. But then what spirituality gives us, what is your being. And then going from the level of doing to being is what is the whole of journey of yoga. Look at the body level. All these activities that you do, they are doing. Whereas when you relax, you go to the state of being. Similarly, at the prana level, when you are, all the activities that you are doing, the speed and all those things is at the doing level. Whereas the slowness, a pause in the prana level is the level of being. Similarly, at the mind level, thinking is the way that the mind is involved in the doing. Whereas non-thinking, partnering is the way meditation will help us to go back to the being. That's why somebody very beautifully put, what is yoga? Yoga is a conscious journey from doing to being. And that same principle has to be applied in the case of karma yoga. But then karma is something which has to go on all the time. In fact, there is no moment where you are not doing karma. That's what is the way that in Bhagavad Gita, first shloka of karma yoga talks about it. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatutishtatya karmakrit karyate yavashaka. That means to say the activity has to be going on. But then there is always a center. The wheel, when you take it, the periphery is there where the activity is going on. Center is where it is not acting. And in fact, the whole wheel depends upon that center where the activity is not going on. The same way that the whole creativity activity is going on based on the center that is there within us. That's what is the consciousness. And what Karma Yoga says is that let the activity go on outside at the periphery level, but you place yourself at the karma, at the center, and that's what is the idea. What kind of an activity Krishna is suggesting here? In the case of Arjuna, it is fighting the war. Such an activity, treacherous activity like a war going on at the periphery, but you keep yourself at the center, deep inside. This is what is the idea, where Krishna gives us this beautiful direction, saying that karmendriyani sanyamya ya asthe manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyachara savuchyate. Mithyachara is what goes on outside. Sadachara is what is there at the deep inside. Mithya is what you see as a mirroring outside, whereas Sat is the deep inside, our own nature.